Hello, the early ones. Any Germans? Because you're incredibly efficient by being early, which is great. So hopefully you can all hear me. You can, if you don't have to put on your cameras or your audio, you're welcome just to type in the chat and just send some sort of emoji. And with that, I'll know. Great, Augusto, fantastic. So if you can hear me, then that's great. Actually, while we're just waiting for the others to arrive, I have a question. What was it about this masterclass that made you go, yes, I want to do that? Although we're in a circle of trust here, so feel free to just be honest, open, and not everyone has to be an expert in this room. You know, we're all here to learn. So when you clicked on the little, picture or the post, what was it that made you go, yeah, that sounds interesting? Or maybe I can rephrase the question if that one's tricky. What is probably one of the bigger frustrations that you tend to find when interviewing users, customers, patients? I don't know everybody's job title here. Maybe it's staff.
Yeah.
Yep. Go for it.
I can start. I think one of the frustrations that I have, I'm a senior product designer, so I talk to users on a daily basis if I can. Sometimes it's very hard to select the users, because sometimes it's not an option for us to really screen users and plan proper research, and so we just we need to grab a few users that are using our platform and that we want to talk to, and sometimes they are not the best candidates. So I struggle sometimes in how much time you invest in really screening those users before interviewing them, versus just selecting a few and overcoming any challenge that you have during the discussion with them or during the sessions with them, right? Some users are very open to talk and very articulate. Some others are it's actually really hard to get their any insights. So how can you actually navigate through that process?
Okay. I don't know if we're going to have time to cover all of those topics, but certainly the navigating maybe some of the difficult conversations. That one could be one that we've all experienced, and it's quite a minefield, right? But a minefield of, okay, right, so I'm a product VP, right? I speak to customers all the time, always looking for techniques. But this is great that you're speaking to customers all the time. This is something, this is something that we all, I think most of us know is a no-brainer, but like Joan was mentioning, it can be really hard sometimes just to know who to talk to, how many, how frequently, how the simple answer, and this is the one that we all know, is the DAR moment. Yeah, we all know the simple answer. You always want to be speaking to customers, right? Or users or whatever. But time constraints, budget constraints, staff resourcing constraints, they all somehow get in the way of listening to customers. Yeah, and then sometimes you'll find that with say, even Zoom. I have issues with Zoom. And yesterday, I think I was trying to get through the customer support. If anyone's from Zoom here, I'm talking to you. Trying to get through the customer support, but only a bot. I could never get past the bot. And then I'm thinking, if you are a researcher, if you want to build a better product or you want to market a better product, how do you do that if you're not collecting quality data from your users, which means that active listening, asking the right kind of questions, all that stuff? Because you've got this bot as a barrier between you and your customer, and then you'll find that the same C-suite who has cut the costs at qualitative conversations with customers, that same group are the ones who are then getting really frustrated that maybe their marketing campaigns are failing, or that their product launches are not working out, and that their competitors are doing better. So this is a very common scenario. It's a bit of a you know, it's not a chicken and egg. It's you just listen to your customers, and the better you do it, the more you do it, the easier it's going to be to build. So try to, when you're, one of the hard parts, like you said, you asked was, which was, what about selecting the users? Yeah, that's tricky. That really is case by case. There isn't like a general rule there, because I'd need to know your situation to help you answer that one. But yeah, obviously diversity, and also going for, you know, really finite, you know, at the same time. So you're going, oh, we're going to go, you know, it's called a spray and pray technique, where you're just going random, and then you're going for a more concise sniper mode, right? I'll say, okay, we want to target these people in particular, this group. Just to add here on that subject, and then after I've answered that, we'll move straight on into the masterclass. One piece of advice I would say, you'll see online, and we all know the history, you know, of where this has come from, is say, okay, if I interview 5 people or 5 users, I'll understand 75% of my problems, right? That, just to be clear, works really well and relatively accurate, if you're, say, testing a login feature or a sign-up process. But that doesn't tell you the why, right? If you want to know the why, you want to know the context and the story, it's about listening to the diversity of stories that are actually out there. That's the basics, right? That is rule number 1. And not enough people spend like that. They think, oh, 5 people is enough. No. 25 people a quarter as a minimum. As a minimum, you know? Like, this needs to just be part of the process. Just keep collecting, keep collecting, keep collecting. And it doesn't matter what your role is. You just got to keep going. By the way, so I'm going to obviously talk, but I know my voice and I get bored of my own voice. And please, just like Juan did, raise your hand. I'll try my best to keep an eye on things and stop and answer for you. I want to answer as many questions as I can do. This masterclass is for you, and I'm okay to improvise and change the direction to try and answer as many of your questions as possible in the time we have, okay? Just some basic rules. It's been recorded. Hopefully Zoom notified you correctly that it's been recorded. I will send out that recording to you by email afterwards, not straight afterwards, but give us a day or two, so you'll have that. I'm not a fan of PowerPoints. I'm going to make this live, but I've prepared a PowerPoint for you that you can read at your leisurely on the train or the bus or whatever it is, preferably not while driving. And so you'll have that as a takeaway as well. That'll get in your email, okay? So Sam, okay, I'm new to the role, working in strategy in the Church of England in a district, yeah, okay, so containing 300 churches. So I want grassroots engagement with churches and individuals to drive the creation of our strategy, yeah, okay. So, okay, challenges, reaching a representative group of people, okay, and everyone is already busy. Yeah, so they don't know what's in it for them. That's simple. That's what it has to be, always about them. It's like, why should they care? And that is your only message to them, okay, Sam, is why they should care. So it actually starts, interestingly, by having conversations, to figure out what they care about. What are their pain points? So I'm actually going to cover a little framework that I use with all my interviews. And hopefully, Sam, and for everyone else, you can use that, and you will find that that will start to help you figure out what they care about. All right, so this is it. All right, good stuff. A little bit about myself. So for those who don't know, I'm probably the opposite to Sam. I don't work for any religious organization. In fact, I started my career designing gambling machines. So some would say I'm in cahoot with the devil. Just to clarify, I have since then, I believe I've sorted out my karma balance. I've done many years in healthcare, working with doctors to help improve patient adherence, work on projects from Alzheimer's to diabetes to diet to smoking cessation to, I've also been a researcher in a hospital, and you know, really trying to make a positive impact and using actually a lot of the mechanics that I learned from there to improve, you know, patients, outcomes. And so and those conversations and that strategies that I used is actually what I'm, hang on, sorry, Linda is requesting, yep, okay, that's fine. So those same mechanics I've actually been using for that. I've also worked as head of design in a toy company. If you have any children who are now probably around the age of about 13, then there's a very good chance that they have one of our toys, because I work for big brands like Disney and Barbie and, all these big ones. So also some of the things that were from the gowning machine industry went straight into the toy industry. And in fact, a lot of the stuff from the gowning machine industry is used, 100% is used today in Instagram, Pinterest, TikTok, even some of these educational apps. It's used in sports apps. All of these apps are using the exact same mechanics that are using gowning machines. The only difference is you're not aware. So if you do one of my courses on behavior design, then you'll know exactly what those mechanics are and you will be aware. But anyway, so that's a bit about me. I've also worked for some big agencies, the classic ones like IDEO, which seems to be laying off a lot of staff, sadly. I have good memories of my time there. Accenture, I know we have 1 or 2 people from Accenture today here. And I've worked for Designit and yeah, so all these different agencies and worked for big brands. So anyway, that's it. Again, like I said, throughout this conversation, please feel free just to raise your hand, ask a question and stop me. All right. Any questions so far? All righty, then we shall begin. Okay, I thought I'd start actually with a very short story. It's a story about how one of my many mistakes in 27 years of interviewing people. And this one was one of my more bigger ones. So I was a researcher at a university hospital and I was working in triage. So basically, if you've ever seen ER on TV or any of these emergency wards, things where the ambulances get rushed in and that kind of stuff, I had to wear a white jacket and carried a stopwatch and a pen and paper and notebook and started tracking and measuring and observing and interviewing patients and also visitors of the patients and timing everything between each different step, right? Quite a technical role and actually quite a stressful role. Even though I wasn't a doctor, I wasn't working in triage. As an observer, it was incredibly stressful. I don't know if any of you have ever worked in healthcare or know somebody who has, or you've been in an emergency ward with something serious other than a small cut on the end of your finger, then you might have an idea what it looks like and what it feels like. And in this instance, there was this boy. There was this boy around about 10 or 12 years old, a bit difficult to gauge. And he seemed relatively happy and talkative and stuff. And I said to the head nurse, who had 20+ years experience in that hospital, I said, so what's the story about this boy? And she said, well, about half an hour ago, this boy tried to throw himself out of the classroom window and commit suicide. And I didn't expect that. And that sort of caught me a little bit off guard. And I was like, wow, okay, all right. And I said, well, who's the guy with the boy? These are typical questions I would normally ask anyway. And said, well, that's the teacher. And he was explaining, yeah, the whole class witnessed this. And a week ago, that same boy was in triage again. So this is not that boy's first attempt at suicide. And this particular research hospital also had a psych ward. So I decided to track this boy. And so I got to the psych ward before that boy came in. Now, something about psych wards, if you've ever been on one, you'll know that no shoelaces, no sharp objects, no watches, no straps, nothing dangly, everything gets removed. There's no loose glasses. The windows have, smash-proof glass on. All the tables and chairs are bolted to the floor, right? It's that sort of environment. And And basically the nurse there, when you arrive, has to make an assessment on what kind of medication they need to first give you to stabilize you before they can have a more concrete conversation. As that boy came in through the room, and I saw the boy come in, now by himself, all alone, I started to get a little bit weak at the knees. I'm white, but I got really white, probably a gray death white, if that's possible. And I started to get a bit of tunnel vision and was about to pass out when suddenly I felt the arms of the head nurse grab me. And she said, you know, Gary, you researchers, you come down here with all your scientific processes and methodologies and all that sort of stuff. And you think, you know, and you get trained to walk in someone else's shoes. Have you ever heard that expression? You know, walk in your customer, your user's shoes. And now look where you are, Gary. How helpful can you be right now? She said, I can't work because suddenly you've become a patient too, you know, because you're blacked out basically. And said, you know, the thing about empathy is that there's two types. And that with empathy, there's this one where you try to walk in their shoes, but that's actually a lie, and it will always be a lie. If you don't have someone who has Alzheimer's, how can you walk in the shoes of an informal caregiver as they're about to become clinically depressed? How can you? Because you don't know. So you have to make it up. You're inventing stuff. Your research starts by inventing. And said, what you have to do is have empathy version 2, which is the one where you understand that the patient or your users of your app, they're in a hole. They've created a hole and they have problems. So your job is just to provide the ladder. And she actually mentioned and suggested the work of Brené Brown. I don't know if you've heard of her. She's done some phenomenal TED Talks about empathy. And she also talks about this. You don't walk ever in anyone else's shoes. Your job is just to carry the ladder and listen and figure out what kind of hole they're in and provide them the ladder. And it doesn't matter what your job is. That's your job, right? So stop walking in people's shoes and start carrying ladders. That's exercise number 1, right? If that's the only thing you learn from today, then I've probably done a good job. Now, the second part. So regardless of your job, you're going to meet somebody, right? A human being. And what traditionally happens is people write down questions. They write down questions, they have these questionnaires. And the problem is, and I've seen this with my own team, they write pages and pages of questions, all really well structured, all in an order. But then I say to them, you know what? Those questions, you just built a questionnaire. How are you going to have an insightful conversation? You're just validating your own questions. You could just send that out as a survey. What your job is, a one-to-one conversation, is about listening, not having pages and pages of questions you're going to get through in the next 20 minutes. That's not the purpose. Email that to them and hope that they fill it out. Your job is to have less of those questions and more of, I'm just going to learn. I'm going to have an inquisitive mind and learn. But that sounds easy until you actually are in the room and then they're talking. And while they're talking, and maybe you've had this, please send an emoji so I know you're there. They're talking and you're thinking, oh no, what shall I ask next? You know, what's my next question? What do I say next? Yeah, right, Marta, Alice, exactly. You know the deal, Leo. Yeah, and you're no longer listening. It's so, and because you're not listening, you actually don't know what to ask next anyway. But the irony is, one second, John. So the irony is, if you treat this as if you're talking to your best friend, right? If you talk to your best friend and they're chatting over a coffee or whatever it is, you're not there at the moment they open their mouth thinking, what shall I ask next? No. So the skill you already have You just have somehow forgotten to use it or somewhere learned not to use it in a professional environment, right? But, and Juan, please. If you want to write or speak. Ah, okay, no problem. So you know how to do this, and you do it great. I hope you do it great. Some say women do it better than men. I have no comments in that territory. I know I've had to learn it. I know I've had to learn to be better at listening, but I know it's one of those soft skills that actually isn't hard to do. It takes a bit of practice and going, you know what, go with the flow, listen to Joan talk. I'm going to listen, and then I'll think about what to say. But I don't have to have answers, and I don't need to know what my question is. I can think about it. I'm allowed to think about it. It's not a race. So you start your interview. In traditional research kind of interviews, we typically, as many of you would already know, typically start with things like NDA, the basic rules, how long it will last, let them know that, yes, you can pause, you can take a break, you can ask questions, you can reschedule. This is all the stuff that we would typically ask at the beginning of all interviews, or we would let them know. We'd also ask them for permission to record. Always record and always ask for permission. And hit the record button before they say yes or no. Otherwise, you have to ask again. But imagine this, you've only got 30 minutes. And then if in that 30 minutes, and I've seen this so many times, I've done this too, right? Especially being British, I don't know how many British people in the room, we like to talk a lot about the weather, and we like to complain, and our way of connecting with people is say, hi, how are you doing? Oh my God, yeah, isn't it terrible weather? As if this rain is new to us. Or, oh, you came by train. Oh, yeah, it was a bit delayed. Well, no kidding, British trains are always delayed. We know this. So, but we think that this ice-breaking ceremony is how we bond. The answer is yes, that's one way of bonding. But Joan, did I ask you about the weather before you asked me a question?
No.
I didn't need to. We can just jump straight into it. I don't know why we feel this need to become best friends with the person we're interviewing, especially if you've only got 30 minutes with them. There is no need. And you know what? Do them a huge favor and don't talk about the weather. They don't care. You don't care. Just get on with it. And I know I'm half Dutch. You might have seen that from my name. And the half Dutch side of me is notoriously direct and to the point. But you know what? I've interviewed, I don't know, in 27 years, how many British people? I'll give you one case study. I've actually worked for a well-known train manufacturer, not one of my most exciting jobs, I'll be honest. And I had to stand on English railway platforms and stop people. And I sometimes had 4 minutes and I had to gain insights from them. Do you think I was going to spend 4 minutes talking about the delay of their train? No, you get straight to the point. They're happy, you're happy. So what technique can we use to create really quick rapport? And this one was invented, I think, in the 1967 or something by Badler. There's two psychotherapists, Badler and Gringer. It's one of those two. They're very famous for being the creators of neuro-linguistic programming, NLP. Maybe that's a term you've heard. If you've ever done a course on life coaching or something like that, then those names would definitely come into play. I remember studying neuro-linguistic programming many years ago and hearing those names. And one of the things they teach you is about rapport, you know, building that bond, that connection with the other person. And what they work or talk about is what's referred to as matching and mirroring. Matching and mirroring is so simple. In fact, we humans, we do it all the time. Kids learn it at a very early age. Primates, chimpanzees, learn to match and mirror. But we can be conscious about that. If we know that, we can be conscious about that. So if I started leaning in and talking like this to Joan, how would Joan feel?
right? Like feel a bit like intrusive, like
Well, maybe interested, but he might actually feel like I'm trying to dominate and overpower.
yeah.
I'm looking down, at the camera, that sort of thing. But no, but what I do is I know he's leaning slightly forward. He's like this. I could do something similar, right? If he picks his nose, no, I'm not going to suddenly start picking my nose. We don't have to go that far. Or scratch his hair. But it's just a general concept. It's a general concept of saying, okay, this person's leaning really far back and relaxed. Why don't I do the same? It lets the person know, hey, I'm in the same mental space as where you are. You'll notice this, even, it doesn't matter if it's a business meeting or a cafe or even a bar with friends. You'll see the exact same matching and mirroring happening all the time. If you ever like watching, I mean, obviously I like watching people. That's part of my job, is observing people, right? But you go to a bar, and I like to, with my partner, we like to try to guess the relationship and try to guess what's the conversation based on the body language, right? Like, is the person preening their hair? How are they leaning in? And we say, oh, this looks like a first date. Oh, this looks like they're actually very comfortable with each other, X, Y, Z. You'll notice when someone picks up a glass to drink in the cafe, does the other person opposite do the same, right? These are the things of rapport. So what we do is we match and mirror. So we're just looking at things like volume, how loud they're shouting or talking or whispering. Are they more closed off? Are they sitting like this? It's okay to do the same. They will change, you change. It's okay. You don't have to, it's not an instant match and mirror. The moment they change, you don't have to instantly change. It's only for the first few minutes, just as a way of letting them know, hey, I'm in the same space as you are. But at the same time, you're still doing all the talking, right? Or asking the questions. Then I've got to be cautious of time. Oh, right. Okay. Question from Sonia. Okay, what if the conversation is over an audio call? Okay, how best to establish rapport? So audio is the same. I know it can be a little bit tricky because you can't see the person, but if you can match their volume, their speed, if they're a person who's very quick to respond, or if they're very reflective and they take a long time to pause, this is also quite cultural, you'll notice. So it's not just whether they're introverted or extroverted, or if they're in a hurry, or they're feeling relaxed. You'll notice like people in Sweden and Finland tend to take bigger pauses. People in America will tend to jump at an answer instantly. I mean, I know these are generalizations, but these are things that it pays to be a little bit more sensitive and aware of. And then you can just play that, all right? Literally play that by ear. Right. Then the next step is I use a thing called grams. So G-R-A, why don't I just type it in? So G-R-A, type it on this machine. G-R-A-M-S, right? And by the way, this will be in the slide, okay? In the PowerPoint that I'm going to give you at the end. So don't worry about stressing about that now. But grams is just 5 letters that stands for 5 different things. The first one being goals. So when I'm going to interview someone, even preparing for my interview, I might just ask myself, okay, what sort of question, what one question might I do that makes sense as a goal question? Right? If I've got users, let's imagine it's a doctor. I might say, what do you think is the goal of your patients that come through the door? There you go. I've used the word goal, right? And it sets a frame. Then I might ask something along the lines of reality. So could you describe me what happens? Or what is the typical process? Or could you show me how you log on? Or could you, the reality part, if you've ever heard of like customer journey maps or user flows, this is the stuff you can observe. Is their reality, right? You want to hear that. Tell me about how you actually achieve your goal. If they say, oh, I'm training for a marathon. Okay, that's because you want to go run a marathon. Great. So how do you do that? Well, 3 times a week. Right. This is the reality. Okay. Then I do hope I'm start spelling right because I'm alternatives, right? The alternatives. Now, this is the one that many people forget to ask. Everyone asks goals and realities, but we often forget to ask the alternatives. But it's one of the most powerful question areas to even ask. Is, okay, was this always your goal? Okay, if they say, yeah, I've had this goal since I was a kid. Okay, have you tried other ways? Or imagine they're trying to quit smoking. Okay, my goal is to quit smoking. How are you quitting smoking? Oh, I'm currently vaping. Okay, have you always vaped? No, I used to try patches. That's the alternative for them, right? This is in the past, and the other alternative is in the future. So reality is the present. We can see that, we can measure it. The alternatives is the past, how you used to do things to achieve your goal, and your alternatives to in the future. So if you are vaping now to quit smoking and it doesn't work, have you considered anything else? Yeah, I'm thinking of going to a hypnotherapist. Okay, right. But had you not asked that question, you would have never have known. So now you're starting to get this context of their world. If you're in marketing or branding, you can actually use this as a form of benchmarking. Oh, you're learning a language. Oh, I'm using Duolingo. Oh, have you always used Duolingo? Oh, no, I used to pay for classes. Right. And how's Duolingo going? Well, right. If it doesn't work, have you thought about anything else? You see how just very quickly you can cover a lot of territory. Now comes one of the hardest questions of all. Meaning. This is the why. If you've ever heard of Simon Sinek, it's all about the why. By the way, Simon Sinek was an ethnographer, a researcher, okay, in his early career. So this makes sense. He understands, just like us consumer psychologists and researchers, we know it's okay to have a goal. It doesn't matter what your goal is. It's the meaning, the why that's driving you every day or whenever it is to do that goal. It's also that meaning that might influence why you won't achieve that goal. So the clues are in the meaning. And to do that, there's two questions you need to ask. And this is called a Cartesian question. So it works a bit strange. So just bear with me here. So I'm going to ask a question in positive. And then I'm going to ask it the same question, but in negative. So here's an example. Let's say it's the smoking cessation person. So the person says, I want to quit smoking. Fabulous, right? And I then say, okay, let's pick another person. Marta. I say, Marta, so you said that you wanted to quit smoking. Yeah, okay. So what do you think you would gain, a positive gain, you're going to gain something positive, by quitting smoking? What do you think you would gain by quitting smoking? Sure, you can phrase that language to your own, whatever makes sense to you, right? But you understand what I'm doing. I'm putting a positive, and I'm assuming your goal is also positive. So positive, positive. What would you gain, Marta, by quitting smoking? Or I could say, what does it mean to you to quit smoking? Or what's motivating you, Marta, to quit smoking? Right? And Marta gives her reasons. Well, because, my health, I want to save money. Right. And then I say, okay, Marta, now I'm going to say the same question, but in negative. If you don't achieve this goal, or you don't ever quit smoking, what do you think you'd lose out on? Right? So I've now gone lose, lose, negative, negative. And normally what happens if you really hit the why and it gets emotional, even if it's opening a bank account, trust me, I've seen this. And I've done bank account projects, right? Different clients. And I've seen this. When you ask the negative, you will see a shift in their body. Normally they take a deep breath. They'll lean back because they need to reflect. And then the eyes might start looking down because now it's this inner voice talking. Because the first one was just the easy, superficial, what we refer to as proximate motives. But now we're getting to the fundamental motives, the stuff that's down here, the real drivers. And this is everything. The whole interview was about this. And they'll lean back and Marta might say something. I don't know if Marta smokes. I don't know Marta, but she might say, you know, I've got 2 kids and I want to see them grow up. Maybe they want to get married, or maybe I want to see them have their first jobs or buy their first home. And I don't want to die young. I don't want to miss out on these stories. That has nothing to do with money, saving money. It's a totally different story, right? So the 2 questions, 2 different stories, but now we get to know proximate and fundamentals. And then the final box, okay, the final box is solutions, right? The solutions areas is the one that most of us know. We know that whenever we're interviewing people, our job is to listen and find out their pain points, their frustrations, right? The thing that annoys them the most about your product, your service, their job, their medicine. So the solutions here is, what solutions do they desperately want or they're looking for that if you can provide, they will be more successful at achieving their goals. Now, the thing about this is it's not a sequence. You can jump, if you're interviewing for an hour long, you can jump around. The key is you establish quick rapport and you jump straight into this. And like I said, it doesn't matter what you start with. You could start with their reality. Say, hey, I understand that you're trying to open a bank account. How's that going? There you go, reality, right? So you see what I mean? You can move around and do things like that. Right. How are we doing? Give me some feedback. How are we doing? Because that's a lot of me talking and a lot of you listening, and I see a lot of note taking, but give me some feedback. Thumbs up, thumbs down, some in the middle, some strange emojis are fine too. Okay, great. Very useful framework, great. Great. Okay, good. All right. Glad to hear it, Sonia. And like I said, apologies that we're going a little fast. I do actually have an online course that's 2 hours long. I'm not here to sell you the course, but but hopefully that, and the PDF, I think if you have the PDF, which we'll send to you, and you look at it and you go a little slower, it'll also help you out, okay? And by the way, just so we're clear, we're going fast. If you're connected with me on LinkedIn, then please just, if you have questions, like in a week's time, a month's time, just send them through and just say, hey, I was in your masterclass. I had a question actually about this, and I'll answer it, okay? So I want you to feel comfortable and that you're really getting this. Right, time check. Not long. Here we go. So next up, I just want to make sure I'm getting things done. By the way, goals, if you've ever heard of jobs to be done, I'm not saying everyone has, but oftentimes people replace goals with job to be done. It's the same territory, okay? And it's, oh, Marta has a question. Actually, did I answer it? Is there a way to practice this on a day-to-day basis without it being used on customers directly? Yes, every time you show up to work, you can do this. Like I said, I've done this at a train station. I was being paid to do it. But next time you're at a train station, you know what? They're getting on a train in about 4 minutes' time. Go ahead, you know? Next time you're at a party or something, I've actually used grams on my kids and they haven't noticed. I've used this with senior stakeholders, clients as a prospecting tool. Yeah, I've used this all over the place. And here's the thing. And even today, after all these years, I still begin my interviews just by writing grams at the top of the piece of paper. Even though I'm recording it, just as a mental jog, because I'm letting go and I'm listening to that person. All I know is I just need to look down and go, oh, I haven't asked them anything about their reality. Oh, by the way, Sonia, could you just tell me a little bit about your day-to-day? Bam. That's all I needed, was just that little jog. and that questionnaire is out the window. Okay, so quickly. So now a little interlude, a 60-second sales pitch or something of the sort, if you like. It's actually a story about my mum, and it's actually a little bit about why I do this. My mum, now retired, and she was an entrepreneur, okay? She was an entrepreneur. She had some strange businesses, and she had no studies. She left school at, I think, 14 or 16, and but she was always passionate about psychology. In fact, she started her degree in psychology when I was very young, and actually I used to steal her books and read them in my bedroom, and that's how I ended up falling down into the psychology never-ending minefield. But one of her businesses was a second-hand car dealership. I was there like, oh my gosh. Okay, Mum, 1, you hate cars. 2, you know nothing about cars. 3, you're not even a salesperson, right? What? I don't understand. I just didn't understand. And what she did was, she was like, yeah, I know, but I just had this opportunity and I thought, let's go with it. And I thought, okay. And my mum was always like that. And what was really interesting is after about a year, her competition, 100% pure male, tire kicking, big engine, la 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 type characters were all going out of business. And my mum was winning all their clients. And like I said, my mum never studied marketing, never studied design, never studied business, never studied just psychology. And one day she said to me, because I was curious, and she said, you know, the thing I've learned is about listening to people. And she said, you know, women are actually in heterosexual couples. Well, she didn't, in those days, she wouldn't have said that, but she said, you know, women are the decision makers of buying cars. And I didn't know that. But the point is, my mum did. And my mum never sold a car as a salesperson. She just said, hi, how are you doing? What kind of car are you looking for? And then she would listen to their story, you know, their reality, their goals, all that sort of stuff, and then go, well, maybe do you want to try this car? Yeah, loved it. Great. Thank you. Bye. Sold. Boom. That was it. No selling. Zero. Just by listening. And it was this sort of thing that led me down this route of my entire career working with designers and marketing people and products developers and business owners and stuff. And as a consumer psychologist, I've always come to realize that everything that they do depends, or their unfair advantage, better said, is how much more they know about humans. Bad marketing can kill a great product. Bad design can kill great marketing. But what makes something bad is your lack of knowledge on the consumer. And so I've been teaching consumer psychology and behavior design in about 12 years in different universities around the world. And it became clear to me, and you could try this yourself, right? If you type in your job title in LinkedIn, it suddenly came clear to me that, hey, if you're in marketing or branding or, you know, learning development or whatever it is, or design, there's millions of you. And you suddenly go, wait, okay, what's my unfair advantage? Oh, I know an extra ChatGPT prompt. Yeah, no, that's not going to work. And you suddenly go, okay, my unfair advantage is I understand customers and users better than my competitors. And that's why this course that I've just created, and this is the sales part, I created last week, is actually not, it's not part of any university. So it's the same kind of stuff, but for people like you who don't have time to quit your jobs and go to university, but might want to learn it. Anyway, if you are interested, go to the website and check it out. Now, back to the masterclass. Now, some other tips, right? This is tips that I've learnt the hard way. These are some tips, and we can free flow this, okay, for the next quarter of an hour. Okay, wait. So part of my job, so Leo, so part of my job is to be a conduit from users to IT experts. Ah, excellent. So often users get upset due to their frustrations with our service. What do you suggest when conversations get difficult? I actually think difficult conversations, I think there's different types of difficult conversations. Difficult conversations are ones that are difficult for you, and the other ones are difficult for them, as in difficult that they struggle to communicate. Like if you're working with informal caregivers for Alzheimer patients, right? Which is normally husbands, wives, daughters, sons, and family members who are not trained. And they're actually one of the world's largest groups of clinical depression. And having conversations with them is difficult for both of you. But I use the Grams method, right? Again, remember the empathy. So they have frustrations. You just bring the ladder. Don't walk in their shoes, right? And log it down. What's really important is the way you log down the data. This is how I even decode my data. I go to an Excel and I put so goals, reality, alternatives, meaning, solutions. And every interview is its own column. And you will be surprised. It doesn't take many interviews before you start seeing patterns emerge. And when you see those patterns, I highlight them and I would show them to the IT department or whatever it is, the senior product developers or the business development team or whatever it is. I show it to them saying, here is the highlighted bit. This is the pattern. In fact, I'd even used Grams as the foundation to building out my persona maps. So if you ever work with persona maps or persona profiles or typologies or anything like that, I also use the Grams and I transfer it in. Sure, I'm adding more detail, but I'm using it as my foundation. All right. So hopefully, Leo, that's a little bit part of it. So be the ladder and have that conversation. Any more questions? Keep them coming. Yeah. So don't be shy. One powerful thing, one of the most powerful tools I have ever used and always use is the silence. So they're talking. I don't know if you've ever had, or if you've studied therapy, but if you've not, but you have been to a therapist, you probably noticed that there are times when they sit there, you spilled your beans, all your emotions are vulnerably out there on a plate. And then they're going, okay. And they don't say anything. You know what? Yeah, Joanne, you're right. That silence gets an awful lot. It actually allows them to reflect on what they've just said. And then suddenly, by you not saying anything, I mean, you might be silent, not to be deliberately silent, but to actually say, you know what? You've just given me a lot of information. I want to think about it. I don't have my question because I'm listening. But now I've heard it, I need time to think about my next question. That's normal. And in fact, if someone was silent and thinking about it, you would probably respect them for doing that as opposed to just firing off questions, just off a list. Like, oh, I just feel so, let's just get through this. So take your time, have a pause, think of the next question. And you'll often notice if it's long enough, they'll go, oh, and another thing. And another thing. And it just keeps coming out. And you're going, this is amazing. Thank you very much. And you said nothing. Which brings me on to the 80-20 rule of interviewing, which is 80% of the time they need to be talking. You can actually do this with a lot of apps these days. I actually use Otter.ai to do a lot of my transcribing. But look, there are hundreds out there, and I'm not an expert, and every other week there's a new one. So, but some of them do actually tell you what percentage of the time you were doing the talking and what percentage they were. That's quite interesting. And it's a good metric. What kind of question can you ask? Sometimes I'll ask, especially if they're difficult yes, no type characters. I know I'm stereotyping here, but just for the storytelling, and I'm not actually saying this is a fact. Imagine they're a German engineer. Like, I think we've all believed that stereotype that they are the most probably like my dad, who's a Dutch engineer originally. He is very much like that. So I'll use him as my example. He's very much yes, no. And you sometimes with characters like that, you need to get a couple of yes, no's through the door before you can start with your open-ended questions. You know, sometimes with people like that, you need a little bit more runway before you hit them with the meaning question. I tend to save that meaning question until I feel really confident that we've established rapport and they're actually already telling me stuff that's really meaningful for them. You know, they're really starting to open up. Then I go, you know what, I think they're ready. But if we just walk through the door, I'm like, okay, this is your goal. What would you gain if you did? They were like, this is no. Okay. So that's that. This is another way that I steer. Okay, I'll get there, Mariam. So another one that I use to steer conversations is this. So Joanne's already asked a couple of things. And what I could do, and this also helps me listen really well. In fact, this is probably the number one skill that I've learned to become a better listener, you know, active listener, is I'm going to listen to you. You're going to say something, and I'm going to listen, and I'm deliberately going to choose one word that's relevant to steer this conversation, and I'm going to repeat it back to you. I'm not going to do this thing which is like customer support. So let me just rephrase back to you what I heard you say. No, I'm going to say, so you say, oh, I want to quit smoking because it's bloody expensive. So you use the words bloody and expensive. Now I can use that word bloody back to you. And I can say, bloody expensive, and pause. And you will go, yeah, it costs this. And because of that, and I only earn this, and I've got to live off that, and I need, you know what I mean? So using their language, not the whole sentence, and I'm not paraphrasing, I'm copy pasting the precise word that I want you to use as a door opener. All right? This alone will get you very far in your interviews. Really far. Try this on your partners, on your bosses, on whoever. I use this one a lot on my children because they speak in abstract language that I often don't understand, and I need to use this. You know, I have no choice, but it helps them find the right words, and it helps me understand, and it helps me listen because I have no choice but to listen if I'm going to use their language. We always use their language. And in fact, when we're interviewing and research, we only ever use their language. When you're decoding a user's insights, it's their language. You don't add your language. There's no room for your language. This is research. This is not a creative process. This is a dissecting process, right? Okay. Miriam asked, how does the silence, would translate when you're trying to keep the pace they are going with, especially with audio-only interviews. Yeah, it's going to be tricky. I would not start with silence if they're starting out really fast-paced. If you've established rapport, and this is maybe an advanced technique, you'll notice that once you've established rapport, you can then change the pace. Okay? So if you match at the same pace, and doctors learn this as well, by the way. In fact, I've actually been on doctor training when they learn this about matching and mirroring. And yeah, they learn to do that. The patient comes in and they're fast talking, oh my God, I got this in my kids, blah, 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 blah. And you normally think, oh, the natural thing is to deliberately slow it down. No, they start the first sentence, say, okay, sit down here, let's get this going. I really want to help you. And the patient's going, wow, this person thinks just like me. And suddenly the stress level comes down. And when the stress level comes down, we can start connecting with other parts, right? And we can start opening up, and you can start controlling the pace, right? And it only takes a couple of minutes normally, and you're done. Right, 7 more minutes. Come on, the ones, don't be shy. This is our circle of trust, all right? Okay, Alice, how could we handle a situation where a stakeholder or client who is observing interferes and takes hold of the conversation. Oh, that is a rotten moment. Oh, Alice, I've seen and experienced that myself brutally. Oh no. Oh, I don't know how many hands up if you've been or give more love hearts to Alice if you've had that experience. That's brutal. That's difficult. That is really difficult because it's now down to the relationship between you and that client. Now, what I have learned is to pre-warn whoever is going to be in that room with me. Normally, I don't invite clients ever if I'm interviewing their customers. They are never allowed in the room with me. Okay, and I've worked, like I said, I mean, I've done, I don't know, lots of different clients in finance. I've done lots in health. I've done lots in whatever, insurance, like I don't care. And sometimes they will say, oh, but we have to be in the room. And I literally will do the grams on them and say, okay, can you tell me what's the goal by you being in the room? Okay, have you ever been in one of these interviews? Reality. All right, are there any alternatives that we can work with? You know what I mean? I'm going to use gram-ons on them until they basically come to the point of saying, you know what, I don't know if I need to be in the room. And I'll say, you know what, I'm going to record it. And how about this? You and I can sit down and go through that recording, and we can have our own conversations at the same time about what's going on. And you can give me feedback. And depending on that feedback, I can then modify that interview, right, for the next interview. But they're not coming in. And I've had many clients, and this is 90% of my clients will say, okay, but what questions are you going to ask? And sometimes I'll be honest with you, and maybe I shouldn't say this, but I will actually write up my own make-up questionnaire. I'm never going to use it, but I'll write one out and say, oh, I'm going to ask them all these questions. I'm not using it, but at least they go, oh, great, tick the box, got the questionnaire out the way. Okay, great. And because they have an anxiety, they might not know you, and they don't have that. Another alternative is this. Alice, could you train them up and say, okay, they said 100%, we are in that room with you. Okay, well, you know what? How about we do some training so that we don't waste the customer or the user's time or anyone else's? How about I train you up? So Alice would train up your stakeholder, right? That's another alternative. Teach them grams, teach them these little tidbits I've given, plus any other things you've got up your sleeve. Share that with them. And saying, until you've done that, and if you say, yeah, I'll need 2 hours with you, because we're also going to do some role play. They might just go, you know what, I'll just sit on the side. Okay, great, thank you. Let me do my job. So good luck with that, Alice. Good luck with that one. All right, look at the time. Do we have one last question? It could be easy or meaty like Alice's. All right, that's really helpful. Yep, my pleasure, Alice. I really hope that works out. One last question. Don't be shy, the circle of trust. Here's the thing, the question you're thinking of asking, but for some reason you're not asking, is probably the same question that almost everyone in the room has, but is thinking the exact same thing. Like, oh, this is a dumb question. Everyone knows the answer to this but me. That's the question that no one has the answer to. Come on, launch it. Okay, how circle back sometimes escaping the point you are asking? Okay, let me just get my head. So how circle back someone's escaping the point you are asking? I might need, do you want to cover the audio, Maria, if you like? Or just give me a little, sorry, I was typing with one hand, baby in the other. Okay, all right. It's falling, oh, that's nice. So, okay, so one question about circling back. Yes, if I've understood this correctly, then circling back here is about, imagine you have, say, 30 minutes or an hour or 45 minutes. I never do an hour interviews anymore. I don't do them unless they're going to do, there's observational research as part of it. If it's one-to-one interview like this, So if Sam and I have an interview right now, I'm never doing 1 hour. Never. I might block off 50 minutes or 55 minutes, right? But I'm going to leave probably 5 minutes early, deliberately, right? One, I'll probably run out of questions, especially if you've done interview 20 people, you'll get very fast anyway, and you've got very deep anyway. There's observational research. You've probably got some screenshots or followed them or taken photos. I used to, when I worked in the toy industry, I used to take my team around Toys R Us and all these other toy shops. And we used to, there are techniques for stalking people. I'm not going to share it, so that, you know, you become these secret shoppers and you track other people shopping and how they're making decisions. So, right, but someone's not answering. Okay, so if it's long, you can always circle back and jump around and cover your grounds and do it again. If they're not answering, repeating keywords, reframing the question, going off down to another letter in grams, and then coming back, it's all doable. Absolutely. Right? Just because they didn't answer it, think like a reporter. Reporters, when they talk to politicians unanimously, globally, are famous for not always answering the question. Good reporters will stick to the question. All right. Sonia, this is it. It's time. So when interviewing, say, 6 people, I get excited about the first 2. Then it seems repetitive. Yes, it does. That's just a reality. How can I improve on that? Would it be best to have another person interviewing half of the users? So this is what you can do. You can tag team. So you can tag team, 1 listens, 1 asks, and you go on rotation. Or you could do things where 1 does the interview, 1 just decodes from the recording, and then you do analysis on that. But you know what, Sonia? I'll be honest, depending on the project, sometimes it's a bit boring. It just is. It's like, oh, when I worked on the train one, that wasn't actually boring client, but actually interesting interviewing people. But I've done some insurance projects, and it gets a bit. So yeah, it's just part of the job. Yes, Matthew. Okay, yeah. If you looked at my LinkedIn profile, you might see some of those brand names. Alrighty, we're out of time. It was my genuine pleasure to share as much insights as possible. Like I said, if you want to know more about people, about how they make their decisions, doesn't matter what your job is, feel free to check out the website, What Drives Them. I'm more than happy to help. Connect with LinkedIn, send me messages, whenever it is. Just remind me how we've met, and I'm always happy and here to help you, okay? So a real pleasure. Have a great day. Right, thank you. Bye-bye. Bye-bye.